DFBU chapstick.
Don't judge. All right, let's get into it. We are a little late. I don't know what this is.
What's going on?
I don't know. It's breaking free.
All right. So tell us what we're doing, because I don't know. I just have a bunch of stuff.
Let's start off with talking about Janet Jackson. Control. Rhythm Nation. You don't remember Rhythm Nation?
No, I was in graduate school. I wasn't listening to pop. Janet Jackson.
How did she do it? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I used to love that album. Okay, you guys. We're gonna start off talking about Janet Jackson, and
what are we talking about with her?
Well, apparently she did an interview in The Guardian, which I want to say is like a London.
It's British. Yeah.
Magazine or site interview resource, and in this, and I read it, in it, she says, well, you know what I heard in referring to Kamala and her thoughts about, I don't know what kind of shoes them are. Them things is that is not of God.
What's going on?
I don't know. It is not right. It's like a hockey shoe mixed with, I don't know, but it's just not right. I rebuke that. So she starts out talking about just herself and her family, and talks a little bit about I think her dad, and a little bit about Michael, and they go down to more just contemporary culture, like what's happening in culture. And the interviewer asks her, some different questions, and she shares her thoughts on it. And from there, I'm not sure if you want to actually go to the thing. Okay.
I was waiting for you to start talking about it.
But she mentions Kamala and says, well, you know what I hear?
Kamala.
Don't, saying it that way does not make Petty Mo.
Is that the right way to say it? Kamala?
I don't know. That the mean part of me wants to say something else. So I got to call her Kamala.
Okay.
I don't know what her name is. But so I'm gonna say Kamala. That Kamala, she heard wasn't black, and that sent people into a firestorm. Don't know if anybody saw the snippet of The View with Whoopi Goldberg and Sunny. What's her name? And how, I think Whoopi tried to be very gracious toward Janet. I don't know if they're like friends outside or whatever, but she was like, we need to give grace and da-da-da.
I would just like to repeat these novel words right here. The 5 best words in the English language. I think Krista is right.
Well, Petty Mo says Kamala is too close to camel. And we don't want to go down that road.
Okay. All right.
That's mean.
All right, continue.
And I am trying to stay right with the Lord.
Okay, continue.
Please don't give me reason to backslide. So Kamala. So Janet made this statement, and apparently, and I don't know if it was like an innocent statement. I don't know if she was trying to be like vicious and sideways. I don't know. It doesn't really come out in the article. But her manager, publicist, person who does a lot of her tweeting and apparently apologizing, made an apology statement on her behalf. And the next thing you know, bounce,
yada, yada, yada.
He's fired. And she's like, I stand 10 toes down on what I said. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, good for you for, staying by what you believe, and, not feeling like you need to apologize because you've pissed off the left. But I thought the response was very funny, especially from Black people. And so D.L. Hughley is a comedian, and he came out strong on Twitter. And so I posted his, I didn't post them. I copied them. Can you go back? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. I thought it was already on the screen.
No, I'm getting it.
So D.L. Hughley says, all I know is Kamala looks like she did when she was in Oakland, but Janet don't look like she did when she was Penny. What the hell is in that iron? Oh, going back to when Penny got burned by the iron?
I don't know what that's referring to.
You ain't never seen, what is the show? It's not Good Times. Yeah, it is good. It is good times. You never saw that show?
Only with you. Like I watched 2 episodes.
When she got burned by the iron?
I have no idea what this is about, but we're
Oh.
very far afield now.
Okay, never mind. Then he says Kamala Harris looks the way she does because she has a mom from India and a dad from Jamaica. Janet Jackson looks the way she does because she has a plastic surgeon. Lastly, he says Janet Jackson's interview sounded like a Trump rally. FYI, it's a little ironic to question whether someone is black while you're breathing through a nose of a white woman. One of the things,
that was a lot.
Oh no. The pettiness could extend way beyond.
My goodness.
What struck me is, yes, Tanya hit it right on the head. Response by the black elite. What happens when a black person says something against someone else who is dubbed to be black or that is promoted by the black elite? You're immediately cut down. So Janet Jackson just experienced everything or anything that anybody who speaks out against what the black elite have dubbed as right and righteous. They'll then come for you and cut you down. And it happens all the time. And so while we, on one hand, say we need to lift black voices, we need to lift women of color, we need to celebrate our black women and things like that. As soon as the black woman goes against the tribe or goes against the narrative, they will cut you at your throat. And let me turn that down. Sorry. They will completely just cancel you to the core. Now, Janet Jackson has, from what I remember, publicly spoken out in favor of Black Lives Matter. The whole Rhythm Nation album was about social justice. Well, maybe not the whole thing, but Rhythm Nation was definitely about social justice and, ending racism and all these things. Now, that song is 35 years old, but I don't think that she has changed that much in much of her cultural or political stand. She just made a comment about Kamala, but Kamala is an untouchable. Why is she an untouchable? Because she has brown skin, not because she's African American. Kamala Harris is not African American. She is not. She has a mom who's Indian and a father who's Jamaican. She does not tie back to the African descendants of slavery on this continent. And so with that, we see that it really is about who do you share your skin color with. And if you share the same skin color, then you're black if you get the pass from the black elites. Because look at Rachel Dolezal. Rachel Dolezal identified as a black woman, but she didn't get the pass from the black elites.
Wasn't she just a white woman with some heavy makeup?
She could have been brown. She could have had, by this point in history, everybody got a little bit of everything in them.
Yeah.
So
I thought she was just a white woman wearing heavy makeup.
But she identified as a black woman.
Yeah.
I feel like much of what we're seeing with Kamala Harris is a cosplay of like, I am black. But in reality, are you though? I don't really care if she is or if she isn't. It's just the principle of, are we really standing for black women? Are we really promoting the standard and lifting the standard that, yes, we want to promote black women. Yes, black women, are this, that, and the third. But then as soon as we go against the tribe, you're cut off. You're no good. You're the byproduct of a plastic surgeon. You got a white nose. This, that, and the other thing.
There's a lot.
It is a lot. But this is exactly what happens whether you are Janet Jackson or Monique Duson. As soon as you decide that you're going to say something that goes off brand with
off code
hashtag, with what black people, the black elites think you should be talking about, then you're going to get canceled. And they tried to cancel her. What are the comments saying before we go on?
Let's see.
Twitter is a hate hive. These black comedians are sassy. They really are, Kevin. Let's see. Lift black voices except when they are a free thinker and not liberal or leftist. Yes. And that's exactly what it boils down to. If you are going to have your Black voice lifted, your Black voice must be chained to the way that the Black left think. And if it's not chained to the way that the Black left think, then like you're thrown away. You're no longer Black. They say that you're kinfolk, but skinfolk, but not kinfolk.
Yeah.
Like you share the same skin, but you're not really a part of the tribe.
Here's Kevin.
Black equals politically Marxist. Not for all Blacks, but yes, it that is what I feel like a lot of the political culture has just become is this political Marxist structure that is, get our way by any means necessary, basically.
All right, with that, I want to transition and encourage you. There's a few days left to still pre-order our book, Walking in Unity. Just go to walkinginunity.com. I want to say a quick word here about why pre-ordering matters, because y'all know, you're watching, you're gonna get the book anyways, hopefully. But we want to encourage you to pre-order because that helps do two things. One thing is that it lets Christian publishing know that there is a market for this kind of alternative perspective, and that our book fills a need for people who want to have a more biblically faithful conversation about issues related to race and ethnicity and justice and racism and all of those topics. So pre-ordering the book really helps to send a clear message to Christian publishing that this kind of content is wanted and people are willing to pay money for it. Second thing that pre-ordering does is that it helps push out the algorithm, particularly on Amazon, as a suggested item to people when they're purchasing items that are similar to ours. Like if people are purchasing Melissa Doherty's book right now on pre-order, or they might be purchasing on pre-order another friend of the ministry. I'm sure Carl Truman probably has a book coming out. He always does. He
does. It's on Marcusa.
Okay. So when people are buying those books, Amazon is more likely to push to them as a suggested sale to come explore Walking in Unity. So pre-ordering helps strengthen that algorithm and push it out. So we are also along those lines just saying, hey, as long as you're buying a copy, maybe consider buying 3 copies, one for yourself, one for someone in your pastoral leadership, and one for your church library so that they can share it with others.
We were in Buffalo, New York this weekend at the Unshaken conference, and they had our book there for physical sale. And a woman came up to me and she was like, "This is my 3rd book. I have one just like you guys requested." And I was like, blessed, touched my heart, touched it. And the next thing that I want to talk about is equity.
Ooh.
Versus equality.
Ooh.
We gosh, in Buffalo. Hey Keita. I haven't seen your face in a long time. Your name on here. At Buffalo, we talked about, or we didn't talk about, but we talked to a lot of people who were asking questions about DEI. What is DEI? How should I think about DEI as a Christian?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay.
Yes. How should we, as Christians, combat DEI? Is this something that's even possible? Help me understand, these terms and things like that. Now, you have done a bunch of content, or, I think like 4 or 5 videos on diversity.
Maybe. Yeah, I've done a few teachings from a few family meetings when you've been in Africa. And I just made a playlist actually on the Center for Biblical Unity YouTube channel of those teachings on diversity. So people can go check those out. If you want to find them all in one place, those are on there. But working on the equity piece, to be honest, like I have been struggling to write a talk on equity for about 1.5 years because I'm struggling with definitions. And you know what a big definitions person I am. If I don't have the definition, I feel like I don't have stable ground
Yeah.
to walk on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really flippant and easy to say, well, equity versus equality. Well, one is equal opportunities and equal outcomes, but it is not that simple. And those are not good definitions. So,
yeah. And at the end of the day, it also kind of boils down to that. And so, what I'm hoping to do with today's conversation is not a deep dive into equity versus equality, but something that kind of scratches the surface and begins to get us to think about the conversation of equity. How are we as Christians thinking about equity? And so, the first thing that I want to start off with is not today's definition, but the definition of equity and equality from 1828, the 1828 Webster's Dictionary definition of these words, and give us some historic root as to how people were originally thinking about equity before a lot of this social justice movement has come up. If you've ever heard me talk about racism, you know that I will point back to before the 1970s, when in the 1970s, Patricia Biddle Padva redefined racism through a little book called, teaching, what is the name of that little book?
I don't know if I could say the name. It is a short little book, though.
Yeah, it's like 40 pages.
You can't imagine what we went through to try to get a copy of it on Interlibrary alone when we were researching for the book.
Yeah, but because she put forward this new definition of prejudice plus power, that definition really took off. And so today, or, when we started the ministry 4 years ago, people were like, I've always thought about racism as being this thing of, my heart or the KKK, people who, really think poorly about other people. But now it seems to be that racism is about systems. Racism is something that, truly minorities or Blacks can't participate in. It's something that whites do. Even if there's no white person in the room, racism can be in play. And so people ask a lot of questions, and in understanding and hearing those questions, we began to look at, what was the definition? When did the definition change? And so I want to first go back to look at what was the definition in 1828 Webster's Dictionary. And so I'm going to start out with equity.
Do I have this?
No, I just have it written down.
Okay. All right.
Because, yeah.
All right.
I mean, you probably would have liked to put it on the screen. I didn't think about your needs. I'm sorry, friend.
That's all right.
You okay?
Yeah.
You just going to track with me?
Yeah.
All right. You sure?
Yeah.
You good? Look at you. That's her stress smile, y'all. She was like, oh, goodness gracious. I don't think this is going to go well. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. The term equity was primarily defined in legal and moral terms. At the time, equity referred to fairness, justice, and impartiality, specifically in terms of how justice should be administered between people. It involved the idea of treating people according to what is right and reasonable under the law and moral standards. In legal context, equity was also used to refer to a system of jurisprudence where courts could make decisions based on principles of fairness. So equity was really about this equitable treatment. What is fair and impartial? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at, do you have the slide that I sent you?
I have a lot of stuff. This one?
Yes.
Okay.
So when we think about equity today, okay, so at one point, in the Wayback Machine in our history, equity meant fair and impartial. How are we treating people fairly and impartially? One of the things that we see today is that definition of equity has really changed. Equity says that it's fair in every situation. This is kind of what they're putting on as the display of it. But in reality, what they're saying equity is, when you look at the diagram.
And explain what we're looking at for the podcast.
Okay. What we're looking at is the very infamous equity diagram with the three people standing on the boxes. You have the tall, the medium, and the short, and they're standing at a fence. It looks like they're watching a baseball game. The tall guy can see over the fence. The medium-sized guy can see over the fence, but the short guy can't see over the fence. And so that's equality. Yeah, okay. But for equity, equity takes away the box from the tall guy, leaves the guy in the middle the same because he can see over because he's standing on a box, but gives 2 boxes to the short guy. What I want to do is really highlight what's happening in this situation. Equity, according to the old definition, would say that everyone is being treated the same. Okay, everybody has a box. We are treating everyone impartially. Regardless of outcome, we are going to treat everyone impartially.
So in the old time definition here, where it says equality in this picture, the old timey definition of equity would fit that diagram better.
Yes,
So
yes.
equality should say equity.
Yes.
According to the 1828 Webster's,
Yes.
which I think it's interesting. The Bible also uses the word equity. We have a comment here as a good thing in scripture, which threw me for a loop when I was thinking that equity is bad.
Yes.
So some people might see in their Bible translations that God rules with equity. And so what that means is, what you're saying here is he rules impartially. Everyone, he treats everyone the same, whether you're rich or whether you're poor. You will stand before the great white throne someday and be judged according to the same standard.
Yes.
That's what equity historically has meant. Okay.
Yes. And that's a more biblical approach to equity.
Okay.
Now, what I'm saying is that the equality side of the graphic historically should have said equity.
Okay.
When we get to the equity side
of
the graphic, where everyone wants to promote this new idea of equity as being what's right and fair, let's analyze what's happening in this graphic. Everyone can see over the fence. Okay, so whether you think that's good or bad, everyone gets to see over the fence. But what we don't talk about is the fact that, did the guy who's not standing on a box, was that box taken from him, or did he willingly give it up?
Redistribution of boxes.
It is redistribution of boxes.
Okay.
The redistribution.
Or theft. We used to call that theft.
Well, it wouldn't be theft if he gave it up of his own free will.
True. If he made an autonomous decision to share his box.
Yes.
That might be what we call compassion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I wouldn't necessarily call it justice because I don't know that any injustice was happening.
Okay.
But I would call it compassion if he chose of his own free will to give of the box. But that's not what we're talking about in today's version of equity. Today's version of equity includes a redistribution of wealth or a redistribution of resources.
That's how they say it.
Yes, a redistribution of resource, which would mean that in order for the short person to see over the fence, because so this could be me and you, boo. I see over all the fences. You be like, what's going on? Don't come from my box. It would automatically be seen as being okay for someone to take his box. And he doesn't necessarily get a say because he's automatically seen as being resourced because of his height. He's seen as having a privilege that the short person doesn't have.
Okay.
This is a redefinition of how equity historically has been used. Historically, the word equality over here would have said equity, especially if we go back 100 plus years.
So then maybe equity should be redistribution of resources.
Yes, but it sounds a lot better to say equality versus equity than to say equity versus theft.
That would be definitely the shorthand way of saying it.
So when we look at the definition of equality, then in Webster's dictionary, it says the state of being equal, having the same quantity, measure, or value, and not differing to any degree. Sameness in state or condition, uniformity of rank or power, such as equality before the law, which implies that all individuals, regardless of status, are subject to the same legal system. Evenness or uniformity in treatment, this refers to equal treatment or equal distribution in justice or fairness. commonly discussed in relation to property, wealth, or privileges. Okay, so it is a uniformity in treatment, sameness, or condition in a state of being equal.
This is equality.
This would be equality.
So equality in that definition sounds like it's the application of equity.
Yes.
It's just I treat people impartially because I'm using the principle of equity.
Yes. Equality is the praxis of how we go forward in equity.
Okay.
But what we've done today is we've taken these two words and we've pitted them against each other. I want to highlight an article from, oh, you know what? Let me go to this one actually.
Go to that one?
Yeah, I think that's great.
Okay, we got another graphic here, so you got to describe it for the podcast.
Okay, so what we're seeing in this graphic looks at equality, and what you have is a tall person, a child, it looks like, and they're standing on boxes, and then you have a person in a wheelchair who can't get the wheelchair onto the box at all. In equity, what we see is that the tall person has had their box removed. That box has been given to the child, and then a ramp has been built for the person who could not get their box.
The person in the wheelchair.
Yeah, the wheelchair who couldn't get their wheelchair on top of the box. Now, where that box went, I have no idea. I don't know, because it starts out with 3 boxes. Their box turned into a ramp. Again, I don't know if the tall person just had their box taken. That's a lot of the argument that I hear in the redistribution of resources, just understanding that you already have this. And because you already have, you have this, well, we're going to give what may have been given to you to someone else, because why would you get more when you already have?
Yeah.
And then a ramp was built for the person in the wheelchair. Again, it's the same principle of this redistribution of resources, or creating new resources so that other people have the same outcome, the outcome being seen over the fence. What struck me in this picture, which is very faint, that most people I feel like would not capture, is if you look in the right-hand side of the graphic, all the way at the top, there's a rainbow.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Right there's a rainbow. And so that's the inclusivity piece as well.
So it's saying in the rainbow worldview, this is how we do things. Is that what you're saying?
In Waldo's upside down world?
Well, I don't know. I'm just asking.
Well, I think that because
we have non-rainbow world, and then we have rainbow world.
I think, well, okay, so first of all, the one without the rainbow is probably the older graphic. That's the one that I saw a lot of in 2020. This newer one with the ramp, it's probably a little bit newer, but I do see it in DEI spaces. When we think about the diversity and the inclusivity that is part of DEI, it must incorporate
I was talking about this side of it. In equality world, there's no rainbow.
Oh, yes. I hear what you're saying now.
In equity world, we operate according to the rainbow.
Yes, because we're also diverse and we're inclusive, and we recognize that all of these things go hand in hand all the time. Kevin says envy was once considered to be one of the 7 deadly sins before it became one of the most admired virtues under its new name, social justice. Why?
That's a quote by Thomas Sowell.
It is.
So, but here's another good comment that's kind of relevant to what we're saying here. Future says, to be honest, I feel like a lot of people, or some people who want equity today, want the tall guy to have his box taken away and his legs swept out from underneath him. But I could be wrong.
I think that that's a really good comment of, like, what does it look like in the practical world? Like, just as people walk this out, what does it look like? The tall guy is going to be punished for being tall. Like, he might be tall.
He has tall privilege.
He is. He's privileged. He might be tall just because his parents were tall. You know what I mean? Or when there was the conversation, I'm not sure if this went actually all the way through in San Diego, but the conversation of doing away with some of the, what are GATE classes called? The gifted and talented classes.
Yeah.
So
when I was in the GATE program, it was called Mentally Gifted Minors, the MGM program. I couldn't pass the test. I could never get in there.
you weren't in the GATE classes?
I took the test 4 times and failed. And yeah,
that was their loss.
I didn't make it.
Shame. But it does work its way out because people want to punish those who, and right now this is all coming down to basically skin color and, wealth. Who has the wealth within our nation and how did they get that wealth? Today, it doesn't matter if you, came into old money or if you, worked hard and earned all of your money. You are seen, especially if you're white, you are seen as, needing to redistribute your resource.
Well, anyone who's wealthy these days is like this operating assumption is theft. They got it by fraud or illegal means. Or,
well, I think that's only for white people. I don't think that's
really?
for black people.
Oh,
ain't nobody asking Oprah or LeBron James where they got their money from.
Talent.
I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
It's the assumption that they must have worked hard and they must have, put in blood, sweat, and tears, but the white person didn't.
Yeah. That's interesting. I never really thought about it that way.
I'm just saying. I'm just asking the questions. I'm just here for the questions.
Okay.
And so as we think about equity and equality under the law, looking at, how do we treat all people equally? How do we, work out equity? Mm-hmm. How do we walk out equity? I think there's a couple of things to consider. What is the role of personal responsibility in achieving, this idea of equity that we want to put forward today? So in the little picture graphic where the shorter guy had to get onto, he got the second box, whose responsibility was it for him to get that box? Did he have to go out and work for that box? Was the box stolen? Was the box just thought to be given because the taller guy just had such a good heart? How do we have a conversation about personal responsibility in looking at equity? Because the
world's version of equity.
Yes, and looking at the world's version of equity. Because what we don't want to do is say, well, because you're short, you deserve. Because you might not deserve. I feel like you're short and I'm tall. Oh, well. The Lord didn't see fit to make you tall.
He didn't. In his providence, I had 2 short parents.
That is very true. Your parents are very short. But it works out better for you when we fly because I am folded up like a slinky on that Delta Airlines seat. Oh. And you sitting there swinging your feet.
It's the government, Monique. It's the government. They're the ones that are going to help us with the redistribution of fairness.
Nothing good comes from the government these days. Another thing to consider is how do we measure the success of the world's definition of equity? So if we go back to that graphic.
Sure. That one?
Yeah. So now the short guy and the middle-sized guy are about the same, but the tall guy is still a little taller. At what point will we say that success has been reached? Is it simply because the shorter guy can see over the fence? Or will success only happen when the tall guy is now on the short end? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like in other words, how do we know that when things have been distributed enough? I guess when their heads all align, whatever that ends up being. But somebody's going to have to arbitrate that. But notice what, I guess from my standpoint, notice what sticky situations we get into when we're redefining the biblical idea of equity into some other definition. Mm-hmm. Then we have to arbitrate all of this wealth redistribution, resource redistribution, neither of which is a biblical idea. So one bad idea has now given birth to other bad ideas. Mm-hmm. And now we have to arbitrate these things and we call them justice.
Yeah.
Which then further distorts the issue of what real justice actually is.
I want to go to, I don't know how to pronounce this, Rebuki. Right here.
Okay.
It's Rebuki. I'm not sure. But and I don't know that. No, I want to say I've seen the tag before. But would this mean that we shouldn't have the government help when people are born at a disadvantage, like the boy in the wheelchair? Okay, so let me explain where my position has evolved from. I used to be a huge government proponent, huge, not welfare in the way that, we were doing welfare in the early 2000s. I would say not even welfare the way that we do welfare today, but looking at some kind of practical plan to be able to implement welfare, especially to the poor and to people who have disabilities and things like that. Definitely leaned more socialist in some of those things. How do we have a consistent, countrywide version of what we would call Medi-Cal in California, Medicaid, I believe is what it is in the rest of, America. But as I've been reconsidering, socialism and how do we truly help the poor, or how do I truly help someone who may have a medical disadvantage or something like that, or disability, I have had to ask the question, what is the role and responsibility of the government? Not what is the role and responsibility of the government according to my 2024 mind, nor what is the role and responsibility of the government according to Kamala Harris or Obama or Bush or anyone else. Biblically speaking, what is the role of the government? The role of the government is to wield the sword, is to protect its people, to
protect the innocent,
yes,
punish the guilty.
Yes.
It's to arbitrate equity, the
Mhm.
classical definition of equity, impartiality. The government ought to punish those who pervert justice, such as judges who take bribes,
murderers, those who, participate. Yes.
The biblically specified matters of injustice.
But unfortunately, we're so
also
go ahead. Sorry.
Also the another responsibility of the government, I would say, from a biblical point of view, is the military to defend the country, because that's part of protecting the innocent. So, that's not to say that the government must not do other things, but I think you get into really muddy waters without first clarifying what is the biblical mandate of what the government must do, but then also looking at the other spheres of what the church must do and what is the responsibility of the family, because these are the primary spheres of governance. And then what are the things I am supposed to be self-governing over myself? And so these are the questions we have to ask. All right, go ahead.
No, so I was just going to say, one of the things that I think muddies the water is that we've lived in a nation for so long that has, in my personal opinion, overreached into certain areas. So now we're doing healthcare, we're doing education, we're doing, all of these other things that weren't the primary or aren't the primary concern or role of the government. And so when I see the question of, would this mean that we shouldn't have the government help when people are born at a disadvantage? Is my answer a cold, hard, fast blanket? No, never help anyone. No, that isn't my heart. But I do think that there should be at least, 5, 6, 7 other processes and steps before that person makes it to the government. So where is their family? Where is their church? Just because they're in a wheelchair has no meaning that they can't work. How are we looking at work? And so just because that person was in a wheelchair doesn't mean that they don't have a brilliant mind and that they can't invent or create or, do other work. And so I would say, looking at how they can earn their own money?
And
How
that
can
would be
their
self-governance.
self-governance,
Yeah.
where does their family responsibility fall into this? Where does the church fall into this? Are they a part of a believing community? And so there are just a lot of other things that or places, resources, I would say that that person should go to first before going to the government, because the government's primary responsibility is not that. The government's primary responsibility is to protect, to defend.
Yeah. Kevin makes a good point here. He says being in a wheelchair is an actual limiting physical disability, whereas being Black is not.
Yes.
And so, but we do have this tendency to lump all of these oppressed groups together.
Yes.
And, you know, that has to be carefully sorted out as well. I do want to let people know really quick. Future says she's looking forward to our Origins video that'll be releasing this Saturday. Please tune into All the Things this Saturday night to see the live world premiere of our mini doc that is coming out. And it tells a little bit more about the story of our friendship, probably the number one question that we get, how the ministry started, and all of that. So you won't want to miss that opportunity. And then we'll drop it as a separate video on Sunday afternoon on YouTube. So mark your calendars.
Yes, yes, yes. So I think another thing to look at is where does the conversation of meritocracy come into play? You know, if we're just now
when we're on the question of
equity.
Well, here again, meritocracy has nothing to do with the biblical definition of equity. It has nothing to do with it, because the biblical definition of equity says, I treat people impartially because they're created in the image of God. Meritocracy isn't even in that universe. So I don't treat people well simply because they have talents or succeed in their jobs or have a great singing voice. That's not part of equity. That's not why I treat people equally. But in the world's definition of equity, here again, we're now talking about something that shouldn't even be a thing. But how do we weigh in what people's actions are in their privilege quotient, if you will?
Yeah, when I talk about meritocracy, I'm also kind of referring back to do people have any personal responsibility in it, or is it just being given? Is talent even a conversation in the worldly standard of equity? I know it's almost time for us to wrap up. I'm not going to go through the rest of them, but what I will say, and as I've been thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, as we were asked about it in Buffalo, I came up with my own DEI.
Oh,
I know. I have my own little letters or words for it, my own little acronym.
I can't wait to hear it.
I know. I didn't tell you about this. Just gonna save the best for last.
Okay.
When you're thinking about DEI, or when you're in the middle of a DEI conversation or training at your work, part of what I think is helpful in that conversation is to DEI. Define, explain, and inform. And so asking people, can you please clearly define what you mean by that?
I might have to make that into a social media post.
Oh. Or can you please explain how you arrived at this conclusion? Can you please inform me of the data that you've used to arrive at this conclusion? So while they want diversity, equity, and inclusion, cool, I might be able to get on board with that. I might not. But let's have a conversation. Can you please define, explain, and inform, DEI? It will help us to have better conversations as we find ourselves in the middle of many DEI trainings and conversations at work with supervisors, even with subordinates who might want to push this DEI narrative. We can push back. We don't have to be rude. We don't have to be crazy or petty about it, but we can ask real questions that have actual substance to them. Please define what you're referring to. How are you defining the word equity? Where did that come from? Can you please explain how you arrived at this conclusion? What is the information? Can you please inform me on the data that you used or collected to tell me that this situation that you're referring to is currently happening within our institution? Define, explain, and inform.
That's good. That's really good. Or Kevin's is,
I cannot get off my timeline. What are you doing?
Dumb.
And erroneous and ignorant. Okay, so ignorant is not ignorant. Ignorant is not from my culture group. Okay, if your mama tell you because you're doing something wrong, don't be ignorant. Okay. Oh, ignorant fool. That's when your mama talking about somebody she don't like. Okay. Oh, ignorant fool. Yes, ignorant. But that's funny, Kevin. I do like that.
All right, so I want to talk about Shannon's comment here. This is a really good question. Does the parable of the talents in Matthew 25, how does it fit into this conversation? Each servant was given different amounts of money, but all were held responsible for what they were given. My answer to that, this is still something I'm thinking through, Shannon, so like hold this lightly and maybe other people can weigh in on the conversation. But the way that I look at that parable is like it's an issue of what Monique and I call matters of providence. That God distributes talents, he distributes wealth. We do not have a say into what conditions we are born into. Mm-hmm. What we are held responsible for in an equitable way is how well we do in stewarding the position and situation we've been born into. So if we have been given much, the expectation is, we ought to use that talent well, use those things for God's glory to build his kingdom. But even if we're only given a little, God still has an expectation that we use those things for his glory and to build his kingdom, not just go bury it in the yard.
Yeah.
So, but God's providence is not equally distributed to all. Some of us are born into extremely challenging situations, while other people have some challenges, but they also have some really great things about their life. Other people are born into situations where no one in their families ever really died and they've never experienced loss and their parents always stay married and get along and it's lovely. Like those situations are rare, but some people are born into that, but we don't have a say in that. The key there is how do we steward what God has given us? Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
That also, God's providence also means that some of us will be born into very hard situations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we sign off, I know that we have had, a bunch of new people who have joined us who may not be familiar with who we are. We are the Center for Biblical Unity. I am Monique Duson, in case you are unfamiliar, and this is the shorter version, Krista Bontrager. And so we just want to say, hey, we are so glad that you're here. Please make sure to like and share our podcast, like and share the family meetings, send it out, send it to people that you know, send it to people that you don't like. Send it to people who say Kamala when I say Kamala. Let you know who I am. But I also would like to encourage you, if you are blessed by our content, would you please consider giving to the Center for Biblical Unity? We are a mission. We're like missionaries here at home. We raise our support. All of the support and revenue that comes into the Center for Biblical Unity, I would say 90% of that comes in from people just like us, just regular people who see and appreciate the ministry and work of the Center for Biblical Unity. Please consider giving. We could definitely use it and would definitely appreciate it. Also, make sure to check out Krista's channel, Theology Mom. You can also check out her website, theologymom.com, where she is equipping the regular Christian. Is that what you call it? The regular Christian, the regular person?
Regular people.
Regular people.
I'm here for the regular people.
Well, I'm here for the choir, me and Future. Me and Future, you an alto? Because I feel like you might be a soprano. I don't know. You could be a tenor. Like, let me know. Go to the comments. I think,
right.
But yes, please consider supporting the Center for Biblical Unity. You can support us directly by going to our website, centerforbiblical.unity.com, and click the donate button.
Mhm.
If you wait 3 seconds, you can also sign up for our newsletter. Just put in your details and we won't spam you. But on Sunday or Monday, sometimes, depending on if we're traveling, you will get a newsletter of a recap of everything that happened the previous week. All right, guys, we are so grateful for you. We appreciate you and your support. We appreciate you just being here and hopping on and hanging out with us, asking questions and letting us know how you guys are doing. We will see you again next Thursday. Or this is Wednesday, huh?
This Wednesday.
It's only Wednesday. We will see you again next Wednesday.